Yeah, so I'm Nicki Vancaudenberg. I will present the project, and then Jan will take over the voice of the architects in the debat. Our two offices joined to realize this project, I think now 10 years ago. And I think it was a really good cooperation between us, between all the other partners involved, between the client, the engineers. I think there was a lot of mutual respect towards each other all the time, which also made this possible. But I have to say, I don't know what we had in our mind the moment that we subscribed to join a competition for 60,000 square meters of exhibition space. It's not something that's standard in our portfolio, but this project really changed both of our offices and the way we think about architecture hugely, much more than I think we could have imagined in the beginning. Actually, as it evolved, so did we. And tonight we also have been asked to talk a little bit about this evolution. So let's start. This is a picture of the project taken a few months ago. You can see two clearly distinctive white shed roofs, and in the center there's a central part that has been opened up. This is the picture then 7 years ago, just before the building starts. And this image shows the end of the 50s, at the end of the building site campaign. So if you compare those three, you can see that we use the image of the 50s as an inspiration for today's appearance. Also interesting is to note the hills that you can see behind the city. They are called terrils, and it's made of a waste material of coal mining. So as you extract coal, there is ground and sort of coal that you cannot use, and they just made hills around the city. But this poor soil is actually today a very valuable landscape. Here we are standing on one of them. We are now looking towards the other direction. You can see the abundance of plants on this poor soil. And again, more terrils on the background. So it cannot surprise that the Palais des Expositions building was built really to showcase Charlerois' know-how. They also added a small layer of romanticism when they were publishing the building at the time. This is a very interesting picture we found in the archives of Charleroi, where once an exhibition on picturesque was held. They just took those trees and all the earth inside because there's actually nothing. It was really a place of celebrating the modern life. Everything was possible. Here are some pictures of events that took place underneath the shed roofs. But as society changed, economy changed, mines were closed, and Charleroi became very quickly, it changed from a very wealthy society into an era of more poor economy. But cities such as Charleroi, with like a heavy industry past, they can rely on Europe to receive some crucial funding to revive economy in the city. It's called a European Regional Development Fund, and that money, combined with money from the Walloon region, it's the French region in Belgium, made that Charleroi could realize a relance plan. There was 150 million euros for this plan, and Palais des Expositions was part of a series of projects. There was 35 million for this project. And here it starts, because actually for a building this big, we might have needed maybe more like $100 million, euros, which is the same. But only 1/3 of the budget was actually made available. And this competition therefore suggested that we would only focus on the middle part to replace it with a new architecture, a zero-energy building with high state-of-the-art architectural expression. But we proposed a project that maybe only cost like 12 million euros, which is again 1/3, which means we could like use 2/3 of the money to invest in the rest of the complex. It's a statement on architecture and economy, or maybe architecture and ecology as well. It's a statement on architecture and practice, how to do more in times of scarcity, but never without beauty. let's see. These are two really beautiful pictures of the central part between the two wings. The main hall has very slender concrete columns, and there are glass domes that are made in concrete that are really impressive. Underneath the shed roofs, we have magnificent halls filled with natural light. The steel structures, they had huge spans for the time, and they were really an example of Charlerois' metalworking expertise. This is in the same room. The roof sheds, there's a span of about 60 meters. We were told it was the largest steel span in Europe at the time. We estimate maybe 10,000 seats. Scale is impossible to grasp. Again, a picture of the central hall, but this time in the state that we discovered it. This grand feeling of the construction site pictures is lost, and you kept no contact with the city around it. You cannot see outside, and the only windows that are there are at 1.50 meter height, and they look towards a technical patio. So I'll start with our competition proposal. We opened everything up by demolishing all the facades, and in this design we even took away big parts of the roof, but never always with respect for the existing architecture. And by becoming an outdoor space, zero energy was needed for heating or ventilation. It's a zero energy building, but we understood afterwards from the Bouwmeester, who will speak after me, that the client didn't see it at the time, and it took some persuasion. I'm going to go through a little bit of the evolution on how this project evolved, because every time, every phase came with a very specific part of the building that we changed. Like actually, in the original competition design, they asked to provide parking all the way on the ground floor and keep all the exhibition halls at the upper levels. The staircases in the central part also didn't connect to the ground floor. But as you can see on this old scheme from the 70s, it kind of makes more sense to think in 3 floor levels. And so very soon after we won the competition, we switched to let's put all the parking in one wing, all the exhibition spaces in the other wing. It makes sense. You get one compact block of conditioned spaces. And by connecting all these 3 floors, we continued. We made models, how to connect upper city with lower city, how to do this with staircases or slopes that were existing. I'm going to point out that in this model, there's still a bit of green along the big avenue on the back of the building. Another model, you can see that we are celebrating structure, terraces, domes, voids, the slopes, everything. Come the permit, we were put a little bit with our feet onto the ground, because Charlerois in 2015, maybe even today, I'll let Georgios decide on that, is very much a car city where everybody wants to have their car and their parking space. So the city asked us to take away all the green around the building and to provide as much parking space as possible. They also wanted to be able to organize outdoor fairs on the terrain. But without activity, it's a very gray sea of asphalt. But again, the same model, it's the middle part that it was about for us. This is an open-air structure, it's freed from its facades, and you get a very good connection, or a much better connection, between the upper city, the lower city, the building itself, that it's actually 500 meters in length, is not a constraint anymore. It opens up and it merges better into the existing urban tissue. Okay, yeah. Oh, no, yeah. Then in execution phase, I was thinking when I was thinking about this presentation, I was thinking about the building that maybe we could see this building as it was an acquaintance that we got to know better and better, and today I would consider it an old friend. And every phase, we got more and more intimate. We got more and more close in knowing the building. And in the execution phase, we actually realized that all these slopes where we were playing with and we were adapting them, that we couldn't adapt them because, as you can see on this section, the foundations, they stopped right underneath the slopes. They weren't going deeper than they had to do. So this means that we had to investigate how these slopes were. You can see on this plan from the 50s, you see the gray zone circling around the building, so it's really everywhere on the ground floor. So we went on site again. We crawled through small doors and tunnels to get access to the slopes and start mapping them, and then introduce all of our findings in the model. And this is the last model we made, and it represents the project right before the start of the build. The model in the middle, and to the left and the right today. Let's do a walk-in from the below city. You enter, and you see the building as it always was, but never was seen. We turn around and we look at what used to be a technical patio, the escalator in the background. We are on a slope now that was always there, but was always hidden. We look back into the patio and back down. And actually, the opening of this central space freed the project from all kinds of technical norms that would make this impossible. I'm talking about energy, safety, acoustics, fire. All these constraints just disappeared. It's another study model and an in-between building site image just to compare. Maybe just enjoy. The old chimneys. And then the Congress, because these projects just kept on evolving. This is a letter we received from the city of Charlerois on the 11th of May in 2020. So we are 2 months after a COVID lockdown. We are almost 2 years after the start of the building site. And we receive a letter from the city to do a feasibility study to integrate a Congress Center into the existing, in our project of the Palais des Expositions. Small catch, because it's also part of the European funding program, it has to be delivered on the same date as the original works had been foreseen. It's quite special to intervene on your own project as if you were the first to take ownership of the space. But it's also an opportunity. These drawings were made for the feasibility study. We started by questioning the demands of the client, which were based on a very high-end Congress Center. After all these years of working together with them, we had gained sort of a mutual trust and respect, and we were able to convince them to adapt the program to something that would fit the building better and the budget. And so we started again from the central garden, the center of gravity in our project, and we made a conference center with a balcony or a loggia that overlooks into the central garden, as if the new project is also an opportunity to demonstrate the potential of the first. The works were ongoing, like I said, and sometimes we had to ask the contractor to stop the works, or the constructions, to allow the new project to be developed. Here's an image of the large opening and the loggia connecting the Congress Center with the central garden, because the original facade was pretty closed. And a few days later, these openings were made on site. This demanded a great deal of flexibility from everyone involved. It shows also the strength of the project to allow changes to be made during the works and in the future. And we propose to extend a bit the scope of this additional budget, also to make work of the landscape through and around the building. It's again a question of economy. You know, with 1/4 of the budget that was foreseen to build a Congress Center next door, we thought, we can do more, we can do a Congress and landscape. And one thing that helped us was our, by now, very profound knowledge of the building. The structure of the underground hall on which the parking spaces were situated, they was quite damaged by humidity and the roof was leaking, so repair would be very expensive, so there was an opportunity. And we proposed to demolish the slab so we could remodel the slopes without having to evacuate or import ground. And the proposal was to create a slag heap landscape based on the terrils with native planting on this very poor soil. You can see this soil here. It's a very black soil, actually also polluted. So we worked with what was there, what could be found. Simple native vegetation based on those on the terrace is then seeded and little trees are planted. And we have to give credit to Denis Dujardin, our landscape architect, and his skill and knowledge to also make this happen. Let's do some comparisons. The technical patio that could never be seen. And the central space that's now completely opened up. And it's actually quite an impressive space to be in. The ceilings are about 7 meters high, I think. There's a lot of white color that can be seen. This is not an architectural, we want everything to be white choice. It's just because we had to treat parts of the concrete with anti-carbonization paint, and the white is simply the standard color of this paint. Here you can see the cutouts that connect with the middle with the ground floor. You can see the park already peeping through, and there we are seeing this new park. We continue. We left some of the remnants of the old buildings, as if we did some sort of archaeology. And the Palais des Expositions appears completely different in the city. It's much more open and free. You can enter from both on both levels because the street next to it slopes as well. So it's open and much more inviting. Yeah, we talked about economy before. Thinking in tolerances makes also economy. And maybe we should more shift to like a more economical way of thinking architecture as an attitude rather than an ambition of having the perfect architectural detail. If the railing doesn't fit, then it doesn't fit. And this clear kink in the railing is then a very honest attitude. We continue our walk, and now we are at the upper city, and we can see through the building. Let me show you some pictures of the spaces on the left wing in this model. These are the conditioned spaces. This is the ground floor where there's a fully equipped, insulated and ventilated hall, good for about 5,000 people, I think. The Congress Center with one sloped auditorium and then 2 flat Congress rooms next to it, obviously with then the foyer. You can see the loggia here appearing that we made to connect even better with the central garden. The combo, the patio, the terraces, the slope, the loggia, mind the railing. And the loggia itself then becomes even a vista on the surrounding industrial landscape. Behind the Congress Center, there's a first conditioned exhibition space. It's the same one. And then underneath the shed roofs, we have a new exhibition space. The roof is completely renewed because it contained a whole lot of asbestos. The old crane is still there. And again, the white, it's simply the color, standard color of the fire protection paint. And in the other wing, we have all these unconditioned spaces, parking spaces, or what can be used for events. Again, new roof, white because we had to. And these floors, they can be used as a parking, but they can also be used as exhibition spaces. There's just no heating. But we actually talked about this, and if you were to do an event and you needed a space that was heated, it would also, from durability point of view, it would make more sense to just put a tent and a small heater in there. It would have a lower footprint than heating these huge spaces all the time. You can see the black ground of the original slopes also on the right. They became part of our architecture. And this is a view towards the street. And what we did then demounted, we mounted differently. Here are some railings that became public furniture. It's an intervention by Doorson Interior Architects. I think by now you understand that our architecture also slowly evolved to how can we not present maybe. It's certainly a point of debate afterwards. So let's also talk about the colors. It's with sound, I didn't know. The colors are S-found and only S-found. Originally, it was foreseen to treat the concrete surfaces that had to be treated for durability and stability reasons with anti-carbonization paint. As said, paint is white, standard brand color. But halfway through the building site, the city asked to paint the whole building. What color? White. All our architectural interventions had evolved into creating something that blended in with the existing. So it made sense to reuse the existing colors, and not that they were there from the start, because no one can tell when they arrived, but they were there, and we thought they were quite beautiful also. Okay, so every element we introduced is transformable, reversible. They're not fixed solutions, they're just moments. This renovation is not an endpoint. That's really important for us. It's just about setting the stage for the future. You could say that what we did was nothing more than what we had to do. Nevertheless, get some really beautiful compositions. In the meantime, I think an operator was appointed about a year ago, and the first events that took place in the building were actually the European national and local elections. But look at the scale of the building, the height of the ceiling, the little guys that you can see, the giant chimneys. This scale, you can only understand it when you visit the building. And it also it really starts to have a life. It also starts to have a nightlife now. These are actually some pictures from a weekly after-work parties last summer. Clearly an event planner that saw the potential of an outdoor space. And yeah. So we've used this building and all these projects. Like I said, it influenced both of our offices a lot. We've used it in exhibitions. Like this is an exhibition from Jan de Vylder, Inge, Vinck Architecten. It's a beautiful section that goes all the way from the terrace through the building up to the city hall. I'm going to show a zoom, but I hope you can see it from in the room. At AgwA, we also used the project, obviously, in an exhibition we did in Beaux-Arts in Brussels a few years ago. We made small extracts of the columns of the building. They've been used in student teaching architectural workshops. This is from some of the partners from AgwA, and this is in Studio Jan de Vylder in Zurich. So I can only say I hope that we managed to pass on some of our enthusiasm about this building to you today. Thank you.
Hello everybody. I'm going to continue in French, if you don't mind. Je m'appelle Georgios Maïllis et je suis donc le Bouwmeester de la ville de Charleroi. Alors l'idée ici, c'est d'essayer de montrer dans quoi s'intègre le Palais des Expositions, donc le Grand Palais, qui a été dessiné par l'équipe de Jan de Vylder et d'AgwA. Alors, en fait, je m'occupe de Charleroi depuis maintenant un peu plus de 12 ans. Et Charleroi, c'est une ville de plus ou moins 200 000 habitants qui se trouve au sud de la Belgique, 50-60 km au sud de Bruxelles. Et je pense que pour comprendre en fait le Palais des Expositions, le projet du Palais, ce serait bien de revenir un tout petit peu en arrière, de comprendre c'est quoi l'histoire de Charleroi. Alors, Charleroi a été structuré par 4 grandes visions territoriales. La première, donc la création de la ville de Charleroi en 1666, est structurée en fait par une vision militaire. Donc Charleroi, c'est une forteresse donc, qui se trouve là-bas. et donc qui a été construite par les Espagnols pour empêcher en fait les Français de monter vers les Pays-Bas. Et donc pendant un peu moins de 200 ans, Charleroi est une forteresse. Alors il y a la forteresse de la ville haute et la petite forteresse, la petite ville commerciale fortifiée de la ville basse. Pour votre information, le palais des Expositions donc, se trouve plus ou moins ici. Un peu moins de 200 ans après, en fait, il y avait du charbon à Charleroi et toute une série de petites manufactures. Et vers 1800, en fait, il y a une sorte d'explosion, il y a un boom comme ça du nombre de manufactures qui se développent et il y a une arrivée massive de travailleurs. Et c'est à ce moment-là que Charleroi devient ville. Vers 1830, en fait, les politiques, donc à l'époque, se disent il faut absolument construire une ville pour loger, faire habiter en fait les travailleurs. Et c'est à ce moment-là qu'en fait le premier master plan apparaît sur Charleroi. On retire en fait les forteresses et on commence à développer une ville sur en fait les parties donc où la forteresse disparaît. Le palais des Expositions est là-bas. Troisième vision. Quatrième, dans les années 50, en fait, moi je l'appelle Charleroi moderne, la vision moderne de Charleroi. On inscrit Charleroi dans un tissu plus large encore, donc ici le tissu de la Belgique, et donc c'est la vision régionale de Charleroi, où avec les grands investissements des infrastructures routières, on arrive en fait à relier Charleroi à toutes les grandes villes de la Belgique. Alors, un petit schéma aussi qui montre ce qu'est Charleroi, c'est l'évolution de la population. Il faut imaginer qu'en 1800, on était plus ou moins à 10 000 habitants. En 1830, ici, donc avec le Charleroi industriel, on est à plus ou moins 37 000 habitants. Et là, ça monte très vite au niveau de la population. Et donc, dans les années 50, au niveau de la construction donc, du palais des Expositions, quand Charleroi est vraiment à son sommet, on est plus ou moins à 245 000 habitants. Et au moment où on construit le palais des Expositions à Charleroi, eh bien, Charleroi va en fait diminuer en termes de population. Et donc, le palais des Expositions se construit au moment où Charleroi est à son sommet. Et au moment où le palais des Expositions ouvre, eh bien, Charleroi commence en fait à se mettre petit à petit à genoux. Donc, ce sont des chiffres assez intéressants. Donc, juste avant ce qu'on appelle la fusion des communes, on avait 245 000 habitants sur le Grand Charleroi. Aujourd'hui, on n'est plus qu'à 205 000 habitants. Le centre-ville de Charleroi, il y avait 25 000 habitants. Donc, le centre-ville, vous allez le voir tout à l'heure, c'est là où se trouve aussi le palais des Expositions. Il y avait 25 000 habitants. Aujourd'hui, on est à 11 000 habitants. On parle d'exode. Tout le monde part. C'est ça, Charleroi. Il faut vraiment comprendre que quand on arrive il y a 12 ans au niveau politique à Charleroi, en fait, on n'a plus que 12 000, 11 000 habitants. Et on vient de là. Au niveau des grandes fonctions, tout est parti. Donc la politique à l'époque faisait en sorte que les centres commerciaux, le commerce, en fait, on préférait construire des centres commerciaux, des shopping malls, à l'extérieur de Charleroi, plutôt que dans le centre-ville. Même chose pour les bureaux. Les bureaux, plutôt que de les construire dans le centre-ville, on les construisait à l'extérieur. Et donc, il y a cet effet vraiment aspiration. Les grandes fonctions métropolitaines ne sont pas dans le cœur, mais se retrouvent à l'extérieur. Et comme si ce n'était pas assez, désindustrialisation, donc c'est ce que je vous disais, à partir des années 50, c'est une industrie qui tourne très fort autour du charbon. Évidemment, avec le pétrole ici, eh bien, en fait, les industries ferment à Charleroi. La dernière vient de fermer il y a encore ici quelques années. Et donc, petit à petit, en fait, toutes ces industries ferment et eh bien, comme vous pouvez l'imaginer, le chômage augmente très fort, ou alors il y a aussi un exode de la population. Comme si ce n'était pas assez, on a ce qu'on appelle le séisme à Charleroi. Ville corrompue, on retrouve en fait des politiques en prison. C'est une catastrophe pour la ville. Donc la ville est en train de faire banqueroute complètement. Et comme si ce n'était pas assez, en 1912, Charleroi est élue ville la plus laide du monde. Du monde, hein. Donc la ville la plus laide du monde n'est pas en Asie, en Amérique, non, elle est en Europe, en Belgique, et c'est Charleroi. C'est ça notre héritage. Et on se dit, waouh, ça va être difficile. Et donc, qu'est-ce qu'on se dit? C'est que moi, quand j'arrive donc avec mon équipe, je suis là pour conseiller le maire. Et on se fixe 4 objectifs. C'est il faut une cohérence entre tous les projets. Il faut réussir à créer des connexions et des continuités territoriales à travers tous les projets. Il me faut une lecture multidisciplinaire de la ville. On ne va pas trop en parler ici, mais dans mon équipe, j'ai des artistes, des graphistes. C'est très important. Et alors, il faut surtout une approche contextuelle sur tous les projets et des identités fortes. Qu'est-ce que je veux dire par ça? Ce sont des projets de Charleroi. Moi, je ne veux pas un projet qui ressemble à un projet des États-Unis ou du Japon. Non, je veux que tous les projets soient des projets de Charleroi. Et donc, on met en place en fait, ce grand master plan de Charleroi Métropole. Charleroi est là-bas. Et donc, ici, il y a un peu moins d'1 million d'habitants. Donc, vraiment, une vision territoriale très forte, très grande. Autre plan qui est important, ça, c'est la ville de Charleroi. Et ça, c'est son centre-ville. Le Palais des Expositions est là. C'est de mettre en place un plan d'intensification paysagère et urbaine. Donc on arrête de construire n'importe où, on accentue le paysage de Charleroi et on densifie dans des zones bien précises, qui sont en fait des zones où il y a des transports en commun existants. Et donc qu'est-ce qu'on développe? Il y a 12 ans, en fait, 5e vision, la vision métropolitaine de Charleroi. Et c'est ça qui nous intéresse, nous. C'est que Charleroi, en fait, doit être la ville-mère, la métropole, en fait, d'un territoire plus large, d'un territoire d'un peu moins d'1 million d'habitants. Charleroi, c'est 200 000 habitants, je vous le dis. Et donc, que Charleroi retrouve une position politique forte en Belgique. Et voilà, petit à petit, on arrive en fait à ce qui nous intéresse ici. Ça, c'est maintenant, on est vraiment dans Charleroi. Le centre-ville est ici. Le palais des expositions est là. Et en fait, Charleroi est traversé par une rivière qui s'appelle la Sambre. Et donc, dans les investissements, dans notre réflexion, ce qu'on se dit, c'est on va vraiment faire tout ce qu'on peut pour faire en fait des projets qui s'articulent les uns les autres le long de la Sambre. On va se focaliser sur le centre-ville, tous nos efforts, parce qu'en fait, on part du principe que si le cœur ne bat pas, s'il n'y a pas assez de projets dans le cœur urbain, en fait, la métropole ne peut pas fonctionner. Et donc, en fait, on développe des projets pour un budget. Alors, on s'en fiche ici, mais c'est important quand j'ai des économistes, j'aime bien le rappeler, parce qu'en Belgique, je ne sais pas ici en Suisse, nous, on nous traite, on nous appelle les poètes, les architectes. Et puis, il y a une sorte de combat entre les ingénieurs et les poètes. Je ne sais pas chez vous. Donc, vous avez compris que c'est une insulte, en fait, être un poète. Mais en réalité, on a développé pour 3 milliards d'euros de projets. Donc, tout ce qui est en rouge, tout ce qui est en couleur, ce sont des projets qu'on a développés. Et il y a pour 3 milliards. Il y a 1,5 milliard qui a été construit et il reste encore 1,5 milliard à construire. Et donc, je ne vais pas vous montrer ici les différents piliers sur lesquels on a travaillé, pas tous, en tout cas, il y en a 6. Ici, je vais vous en montrer 3. l'image et l'identité, qui est pour moi un des piliers les plus importants, en tout cas, sur lesquels on a travaillé, c'est de se dire, bah oui, en fait, on hérite d'une ville qui est dans un état catastrophique. Une des premières choses sur lesquelles il faut travailler, c'est une toute nouvelle identité, des nouvelles images. Et en fait, moi, ça me permettait aussi d'aller extrêmement vite sur le fait de proposer des nouveaux projets et des projets qui se construisent très vite. L'architecture, c'est lent. Il faut 10 ans. Yann, combien d'années? Nicki, pour le Palais des Expositions, il a fallu 8 ans pour le construire. Et donc, très vite, en fait, j'ai lancé des concours pour travailler sur un nouveau logo pour la ville de Charleroi, des nouvelles photos, plein de photos, plein. Vous tapiez Charleroi sur Google Images et c'était une catastrophe, quoi. Et donc, on a fait travailler beaucoup de photographes pour créer ces nouvelles images, beaucoup de graphistes aussi pour créer des nouvelles affiches. On a travaillé sur beaucoup de publications, on a beaucoup travaillé sur Wikipédia, créer du contenu, expliquer en fait ce que c'est la ville, qu'est-ce qu'il y a d'intéressant. Deuxième grand pilier, c'est de me dire en fait, qu'il y a moyen de ramener les grandes fonctions métropolitaines en centre-ville. Et donc, on a fait un grand travail sur le centre-ville, le palais des expositions est là-bas en haut. Et donc, on a rénové en fait une grande partie de la ville basse. Donc, dans le centre-ville, il y a la ville basse et la ville haute. Et donc, ça, c'est la partie basse, enfin la ville basse où il y a la Sambre qui passe. Et voilà, il y a une grande partie déjà qui est ici complètement rénovée. On ne va pas en parler ici, mais c'est pour montrer en fait que le palais des expositions s'intègre dans un plan beaucoup plus large. Des fonctions industrielles, c'est peut-être le prochain projet que vous allez présenter l'année prochaine. C'est un projet exceptionnel, c'est un projet de Office, Kirsten Gers et David Van Severen. C'est la Mega Factory. C'est un projet d'industrie où ils vont construire 500 petits satellites par an et qui se trouve vraiment à proximité du centre-ville. Ça va être un projet assez incroyable. Je vous invite à regarder sur Internet si vous trouvez des images. Des centres culturels, ici complètement rénovés. On a beaucoup rénové en fait aussi sur Charleroi. Contrairement à beaucoup de villes, on n'avait pas les moyens pour construire des nouveaux bâtiments et donc on a rénové le tissu urbain existant. Des bureaux, on arrête de construire toujours en périphérie. Maintenant, on construit en centre-ville et on fait vivre le cœur. Et le projet qui nous intéresse ici, Charleroi, district créatif. Et c'est peut-être le projet le plus important qui a été fait ces 10 dernières années à Charleroi. Donc c'est au niveau c'est la ville haute, il y a la ville basse qui est ici, et la Sambre qui passe par ici. On a pensé, en fait, rénover une grande partie de la ville haute dans laquelle se trouve en fait un ancien campus qui était des écoles en fait industrielles, puisque Charleroi était une ancienne ville industrielle qui se trouve là-bas. Campus pas connu du tout des citoyens de Charleroi, personne n'y allait, toute une série de bâtiments très intéressant, assez beau en fait, de la période de l'exposition industrielle de 1911, qui était assez importante en Belgique. Et on décide en fait de rénover cet ensemble pour en faire un campus universitaire. Et dans les 500 premières villes européennes, Charleroi est la seule ville dans laquelle il n'y a pas d'université. Incroyable. Et donc, en fait, on a ramené 3 universités qui travaillent ensemble. Donc ça marche assez bien. De l'autre côté, ici, un ensemble culturel dans lequel on retrouve le Palais des Expositions, qui se trouve là, et le Palais des Beaux-Arts, qu'on rénove. Et entre les deux pôles, pôle campus, pôle culturel, des espaces publics, ici complètement rénovés par, ici, l'architecte paysagiste Bas Smets. Et donc ça, c'était ce portefeuille de projet. C'est comme ça que ça a commencé donc, en 2014. Et donc on a lancé toute une série de concours, dont le Palais des Expositions. Et ce que vous voyez, c'est qu'en fait, le Palais des Expositions se lie comme ça à toute une série de projets. On ne peut pas considérer le palais d'exposition seul. Voilà, au niveau des espaces publics, ça c'est des places qui ont été, des boulevards qui ont été rénovés. Ce sont des arbres, ça a été pris en hiver, bon, tout ça va grandir. La place principale de Charleroi, la place Vauban, le campus, des anciens bâtiments industriels ici, enfin de l'exposition industrielle complètement rénovée. Le musée des Beaux-Arts. Et ici, le Grand Palais. Nicki vous a montré beaucoup de photos. Et en fait, ce qu'on voit quand on a lancé le concours ici d'architecture, on a fait un truc un peu fou, c'est qu'on s'est dit, en fait, ce qu'ils voulaient à l'époque, le politique et l'administration, c'était démolir le palais des expositions. C'est un bâtiment iconique de Charleroi, c'est peut-être le bâtiment le plus connu de Charleroi, il est très grand. Tous les habitants de Charleroi le connaissent, même au-delà. Et en fait, ce qu'on nous demandait, c'était, on le démolit. Et avec le maire, à l'époque, on s'est dit, non, en fait, on ne peut pas le démolir. De toute façon, on n'a pas l'argent. Et c'est un bâtiment symbolique pour Charleroi. Nous allons en faire plutôt une rénovation. Et l'idée, c'était de l'inscrire le plus possible dans le paysage industriel de Charleroi. Et c'est là où on fait un pari un peu fou, c'est qu'on se dit, il doit se passer quelque chose là. Et donc, au niveau du concours, on ne savait pas exactement ce qu'on allait avoir comme résultat. Et on reçoit les propositions. Et de fait, dans les propositions, on changeait mais complètement la nature en fait, du palais des expositions. Et la seule proposition qui gardait en fait la nature, qui gardait le palais des expositions, sa symbolique, ses formes architecturales, son empreinte comme ça dans le paysage de Charleroi, c'était la proposition qui a été ici présentée par Nicki. Sauf que personne ne comprenait le projet. Alors ça, Nicki, tu n'as pas montré le plan et malheureusement je ne l'ai pas, mais il faut voir l'axonométrie de la proposition. Donc, je me dis, merde, comment est-ce que je vais réussir à expliquer ce projet à des gens qui n'arrivent pas à comprendre graphiquement ce qui se passe sur la feuille. Donc il m'a fallu une bonne petite heure pour décomposer l'axonométrie. Ça ressemblait à un plan de Peter Eisenman avec les House 4 incompréhensibles. Et c'est vrai que c'était assez difficile. Et j'ai dit, mais en fait, c'est ça la bonne proposition. C'est une proposition en fait, qui est très forte et qui déconstruit en fait, le centre, le milieu en fait, du palais des expositions et qui crée un lien très fort entre la ville et toute la périphérie. Et donc à Charleroi, il y a un paysage assez particulier fait de montagnes. On est sur la montagne ici, donc les terrils, et avec lesquels il faut jouer. Et donc dans la proposition, en fait, il y avait le jardin qui rentrait à l'intérieur du palais d'exposition et qui venait se lier avec ce qu'on appelle la porte ouest. Et donc c'était ça en fait toute l'histoire. C'était un projet assez incroyable parce que conceptuellement, il s'inscrivait dans le projet politique de Charleroi. Charleroi, une ville en faillite, une ville qui est sur les genoux, une ville qui s'est complètement effondrée, et une ville qui a besoin d'un boost comme ça conceptuel, radical, extrêmement fort pour pouvoir en fait revivre. Un des troisièmes piliers, et je pense qu'il est important à présenter, c'était les espaces publics, sur lesquels on a beaucoup travaillé à Charleroi. Voilà, rénovation en fait des quais de la Sambre, la rivière, toute une série de places complètement rénovées, la place centrale de la ville basse, ça je vous ai montré tout à l'heure, la place Vauban, qui est le centre en fait de la ville de Charleroi, le campus, des places en périphérie, voilà. Et un des piliers, c'est l'intensification du paysage de la porte ouest. Et en fait, la porte ouest, c'est maintenant le prochain projet sur lequel on est en train de travailler. Le palais des expositions, le centre-ville est là, le palais des expositions est là, et la porte ouest, c'est toute cette porte industrielle de Charleroi. C'est là où il y a encore un concentré d'industrie. C'est là où, quand on tape Charleroi, c'est l'image de Charleroi. Ce sont ces industries noires comme ça, cette ville en fait qu'on appelle le pays noir aussi en Belgique, sur lequel on va travailler. Et on voit en fait que le palais des expositions, c'est l'interface entre le cœur de ville et en fait la partie industrielle de Charleroi. Donc, voici les terris, les montagnes dont vous parlez, Nicki. Le palais des expositions est quelque part là, à l'arrière. Et donc, en fait, on voit que ce sont des paysages assez étonnants qui sont très proches en fait, du cœur de ville qui est là-bas en fond. Voilà, ce sont les projets sur lesquels on est en train de travailler actuellement. Donc, toute la porte ouest qui va être complètement rénovée, qui fait 200 hectares. C'est l'équivalent du centre-ville. Voilà une image assez impressionnante de à quoi ça ressemble aujourd'hui. Donc, il va y avoir des très grands projets qui vont se faire là-bas. Et voilà, ça c'est le palais des expositions, qui est vraiment cette porte, comme vous pouvez le montrer donc Nicki, où quand on est ici, à l'intérieur en fait du palais des expositions, dans cet espace incroyable, assez étonnant, qui ressemble à une ruine en fait, quelque part. Et c'est peut-être ce qui est difficile pour les habitants de Charleroi, c'est de se dire que ce bâtiment est terminé. Il y a plein qui disent mais non, il n'est pas terminé ce bâtiment. Il manque plein de choses. Mais si, il est terminé. Enfin, c'est pas qu'il est terminé. C'est même pas ça la question. Et en fait, le palais d'exposition devient aujourd'hui l'interface entre le cœur de ville, ici, la Sambre, et tout le développement de la porte ouest. Voilà, merci à vous.
In the discussion, I would actually like to focus a bit more on the building and what you, as the city, did with it. And actually, the first thing that I want to know is how was it possible to actually change the perspective from demolition to keeping the building? Because you said the expectation of the politicians at the time that you entered the scene was actually to get rid of the building. So how come this prerequisite was changed?
Pour plusieurs raisons. La première, c'est que on n'avait pas le choix au niveau économique, au niveau des budgets, de démolir en fait ce bâtiment et de le reconstruire. Je pense que là, on avait un problème, mais je pense qu'on aurait pu quand même le faire. Une deuxième raison, c'est que politiquement, c'était difficile de démolir un bâtiment auquel les habitants de Charleroi étaient fort attachés. Une troisième raison, c'est que c'était un bâtiment emblématique pour nous et pour moi encore plus, parce qu'en fait c'était un bâtiment moderniste de Charleroi, de la grande période de Charleroi. C'est un bâtiment qui était juste magnifique. On ne pouvait pas imaginer le démolir pour tenter de construire quelque chose de mieux que ce qu'on avait. Et je pense que le maire, donc le Bouwmeester, était un peu fou, un peu comme moi, et on n'a pas écouté en fait la voix de certains politiques de l'administration. On s'est dit non, on va lancer ce concours, on va le rénover ce bâtiment, et je pense qu'on va avoir des bonnes propositions. L'ironie de la chose, c'est que toutes, excepté une, toutes les propositions, excepté une, étaient vraiment mauvaises. Ça veut dire qu'en fait, tous les bâtiments déguisaient, comment dire, on avait des propositions vraiment décoratives. Il n'y avait aucune proposition qui était forte, excepté en fait celle ici qui a été présentée, qui était une proposition assez incroyable, très forte au niveau de son architecture, et qui a fait que le bâtiment, le projet présenté était encore mieux au niveau architectural que, pour moi, l'objet initial. Et donc, c'était...
I didn't understand the last point. It was...
La proposition était meilleure que la proposition initiale, que le bâtiment de base. Et je me suis dit, en fait, ça, c'est une proposition qui transcende, en fait, l'architecture de base.
Can you talk a little bit about the relationship of this project and the competition brief? Because I have the feeling that this project superseded a little bit or contradicted also the expectation of the competition brief. Can you recall for us, because nobody knows here, what did you actually ask from the architects? What was actually the question to the architects, what they should have done?
Alors, nous, dans le brief du concours, on inscrivait le palais des expositions dans quelque chose de plus large. Donc, rénovation d'espaces publics, rénovation du campus et rénovation du pôle culturel. Et la seule chose, nous, qu'on demandait par rapport au palais des expositions, c'était une relation très forte entre le palais des expositions. En fait, le palais des expositions, il fonctionne comme une muraille, comme une forteresse. Enfin, comme un mur ici, qui empêche la ville de dialoguer avec la périphérie, avec sa porte, ce qu'on appelle la porte ouest, avec le paysage de Charleroi. C'est un mur, hein, c'est immense comme bâtiment, vous l'avez vu. Regardez, ça c'est une petite maison. Voilà. Et ça c'est le palais des expositions. C'est très grand. Ça c'est l'hôtel de ville, le City Hall. Et ça, c'est le palais des expositions. Ce bâtiment, il est gigantesque. Et ce qu'on demandait, c'était de créer un lien extrêmement fort, en fait, entre ville et paysage de Charleroi. Alors nous, on avait déjà senti quelque chose au niveau de mon équipe, c'est que ce lien, la connexion, elle pouvait se trouver ici. Voilà. Ça on l'avait compris déjà au niveau du brief. Par contre, là où l'équipe a été beaucoup plus loin, c'est qu'elle a vraiment complètement démoli le centre en fait, du bâtiment, qui était abrité, qui était pour en faire quelque chose de complètement ouvert. Et ils ont fait rentrer en fait ce jardin ici à l'intérieur du bâtiment. Et ça c'est vrai qu'on ne s'y attendait pas.
Okay. Maybe you can give the mic to Jan, because I would like to ask you exactly what was the expectation of the competition that, as you read the brief, and how did you think you could work or not work with it?
Well, I like to give a small context to that. The competition needed to be delivered a moment that both offices were closing for vacation. It needed to be delivered. And we stayed at the practice with a couple of enthusiasts, not that the others are not enthusiastic, but at least we stayed with a couple. And when we read the brief, first of all, it was an open competition, anonymous. So we were not invited or something like that, and we were not remunerated either. Mm-hmm. That's a typical, I want to share that with you, that's maybe different today, but still in Belgium very common. It's better since the last decades, but initially it was like that. And so what you do at that point, you confronted with your own economy to start from. It's summer, you don't want to spend too much time. And on the other hand, what we have to deliver, you don't want to spend too much. And often we have the attitude to say at that moment, let's do something by which we possibly will not win the competition, but which was interesting to think about and to take a position, a certain stance into a certain condition. And the conditions were very clear. The budget did not fit with what was the aim. On the other hand, it has a typical agenda of the nowadays, surely sustainable, surely energy zero. Everything, you almost don't have to write it anymore because it's obvious, it's standard. And on the other hand, the idea of making it into contemporary architecture. And these were two things that fascinated us. First of all, I think we have a tradition, or let's say an attitude and a practice at all to work with a, let's say, limited economy as a point of interest. But the other point also the question of what is contemporary architecture? Why should we bring this building to another meaning of architecture than it was before? If we look to the building, you see a lot of engineering work in it, construction of floors or of ceilings, or roofs into metal. It was really an engineering piece. However, the architecture was expressed in a kind like of neo-bourgeoisie, city-like facadism. It was a very fascinating thing, and to think also about, at that point, what is contemporary architecture. And then things always go quick at a certain moment. We saw that image of the building site end of the 50s, I think. Mm-hmm. And we looked at it and we saw that where today it's a block in the city, really that fell bang in the city and cut it into parts. When you look to that building site image, that black-white we saw in the start, Nicki showed, we saw openness going through it. And it was just because it was a status of the building site in which the middle part was unfinished. And we said, well, maybe let's do that. And that gave us a summer economy of going quick with these kind of drawings. We wrote a text, and indeed we presented the project as a zero-energy building, as it has been repeated already here, because you don't need energy. And we believed, on the other hand, also it was not a matter of being contemporary in architecture, but it was a matter of saying, well, if we look to things, ecology, city, society, commons, everything, creating a little terraced park in between is the key of the proposal. Let's work it out like that. And then while working out, of course, obviously, where they had only 1/3 of the budget to do a total renovation, we presented something at 1/3 of the project, and we could go back with a suggestion to discuss what to do with the other parts. And two things need to be added on that. We also realized that maybe our proposal might delay. Mm-hmm. Delay in the sense that at the moment they don't need more. They don't need a very conditioned 12,000 square meter meeting place in the center as it was in the old days. It can become that park. But maybe in the future, whenever, and I hope for Charleroi, economy grows and there is again need on a total project, we can again, that project is still available for change. Mm-hmm. Maybe they glue again facades on it and it becomes something else. Why not? I'm looking even forward to that kind of move. So to me, this was an extra layer by saying, well, at least if the next facade is to come, it will be not by demolishing our facade. Mm-hmm. It will be with an addition. There is no facade. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I'd like to come back to the relationship between the idea of the building as it was expressed and called for in the competition brief and your project. Would you say your project fulfilled the expectation of the client?
Well, I think it fulfilled it totally, and thank you for the appreciation, it doubled even fulfilled it. It fulfilled it in the sense that, to me, we hit all the checkbox, so the demand or the program was fulfilled, but then indeed in an unexpected way. A meeting place which is an open urban place. Mm-hmm. So I believed it was, maybe thanks to the limited time of thinking we had, it hit it all, and also, of course, as we are architects working in a world not only making things, but also discussing things, and at that point, 10 years ago, the whole issue on reuse, on sustainability became very hot. It is still very hot and overheated today. That's another discussion. we think that we made there a mind shift. And it comes, in fact, back to me in many discussions. It's not about ecology and sustainability. It's about working with economy of means. So it's not only budget, but it's about time, it's about necessity, and all these things. And obviously, by that you end up in a sustainable discourse, but not starting from it to obtain it. Because, of course, you could have insulated facades with ecological material and so on, and everyone would have said, this is the state of the art, what you're looking for, contemporary, sustainable architecture. But that was just fulfilling the question, namely giving a new image and making it energy safe. And we think with this proposal, we indeed transferred it to another discussion in architecture, where I'm looking for, or we are looking for, and as Nicki also said, to me it was already inherited in what we did in practice, but here it came on a scale test. It became a test in scale, a test in a total other dimension. And that was, to me, the pleasure of that summer, and to our big surprise, the fact that we were selected to make the project. And I thought, like, well, at least we will not work 5 years, and at the end it became 10 years, thanks to pandemic and all what came in between, but we will work not 5 years on a project of which we say, fine, but now we say, wow, let's go for this.
Yeah, but you said you completely fulfilled the idea, the expectation of the client. Yeah. Previously, you told me the expectation of the client was actually that the middle part, which you took out, was replaced by a state-of-the-art exhibition fair building. Yeah. That's obviously what you didn't do.
No, but the point was that we said also in what we explained to the client, of course, in our conceptual note, we said, well, you have the things already. You don't need to make them again. It's there. And you left to live with it. And plus, I think why the client focused on that center part is, of course, because it's also a good client who knows the economy of the budget available and what you can do with it. The 35 million euros was fairly good enough to make it a 1,000 euro square meter renovation of that center part, which we dropped in that part. So the client was already so fair to say, oh no, don't spread it over the building, but focus on that. While we could come back and say, in our proposal, we need 1/3, so we have 2/3 now for some essential interventions in the other part of the building. For example, a discussion which is even a very safety discussion, the asbestos removal of all the roofs, which was not part of the competition and of which was said, well, that's not your point. We ask you to go into that middle point. Where we said as architects, no, it is our point. Because thanks to this crazy Belgian law in which you are, as architect, responsible for whatever you think in life, even if we would operate the middle part and there would be a fire problem in the left and the right building, we could be blamed for it because we, as a free profession, need to point to our client that it's not accordingly the standard regulations. It was a discussion I brought at a certain moment, maybe not with you, but with Igritech, to say, like, watch out, we have to discuss this. So we had 2/3 of the budget possible to make the other parts of the building just simply better. There is no architecture expression. There's just the introduction of techniques, the introduction of fire and waterproofed roofs and everything. And that I found also important.
Georgios, I would like you to talk about the challenge to communicate this project, that project, to the world of politics, because if you have the expectation you get a smaller exhibition building at the state of the art of our time, and what you get is this project, there is of course a polemical, let's say, provocation in some way, because this building shows it's basically an homage to sufficiency. It shows you how little you need in order to do something, but it actually forces you to step down from your comfort expectations, right? 2/3 of this building are not heated, right? 1/3 of the building has no facades. So did this, I mean, how was this proposal actually greeted by the normal politicians? Did they say, you're out of your mind and this is not a project? Or was it smooth?
Alors, pour revenir un peu en arrière, en fait, on a lancé un concours d'un projet impossible. C'est un projet complètement schizophrène, parce qu'il a été écrit, le brief du concours, un par l'administration et par mon équipe. Et donc, on avait... ce projet, ça devait être un échec. Donc, ça veut dire que, normalement, si... c'est difficile d'en parler comme ça, mais si on ne s'était pas battu pour ce projet, le projet qui allait gagner en fait le concours allait être un véritable échec. Et
un véritable quoi?
Échec.
Échec, ok.
Le projet allait s'arrêter pour plein de raisons, quoi. Je pense que très vite, on s'est rendu compte que la seule manière, que la seule solution possible était en fait cette proposition. Parce qu'elle donnait toute la latitude de rénover en fait un bâtiment au niveau qu'on veut. Donc on n'était pas obligé de tout rénover, d'isoler le bâtiment, de construire de nouvelles façades. Non, on faisait plus ou moins ce qu'on voulait. Et donc, en termes d'économie, par exemple, la meilleure économie, c'est de se dire qu'en fait, on ne rénove pas tout le bâtiment parce que ça ne sert à rien. Et donc, c'est pour ça qu'il y a des parties du bâtiment qui sont sans façade, qui ne sont pas isolées, parce qu'en fait, le bâtiment, on n'est pas obligé de le faire fonctionner toute l'année. Et donc, on peut se concentrer sur la rénovation complète d'une partie et laisser le reste de côté dans l'état d'une presque ruine, quoi. Mm-hmm. Et donc, c'est un projet important pour moi au niveau architecture, parce qu'il montre en fait que, quelque part, on est dans d'autres paradigmes. Et en fait, on n'a jamais vu un bâtiment comme ça. C'est très rare, en fait. Tous ceux qui viennent à Charleroi, je peux leur montrer beaucoup de projets et ils disent « Waouh, c'est pas mal ». Mais le Palais des Expositions, pour moi, dans l'histoire de l'architecture, c'est vraiment quelque chose de particulier qui perturbe. Parce qu'en fait, ça perturbe nos sens et l'idée qu'on a de l'architecture, d'un bâtiment, d'un espace fermé, d'un espace ouvert, de ce qu'est un bâtiment terminé, de ce qu'est un bâtiment pas terminé, d'un bâtiment en évolution. Vraiment, c'est très perturbant. Et donc, il faut imaginer que si c'est perturbant pour nous, architectes, pour des gens qui ne sont pas architectes, ou qui n'ont pas la sensibilité, en tout cas architecturale, c'est pas simple. Et donc, c'est un bâtiment, en fait, qui reste compliqué à faire fonctionner dans l'esprit, en fait, des habitants de Charleroi et au niveau politique. Alors, les politiques ont changé. Ici, il y a eu des élections à Charleroi, enfin en Belgique, et donc maintenant on a des nouveaux politiques qui sont arrivés à Charleroi. Et c'est vrai que quelque part je les comprends parce qu'ils se demandent mais c'est quoi ce bâtiment? Qu'est-ce que vous avez voulu faire? Enfin, on ne comprend pas. Sauf que quand on revient en arrière et qu'on comprend le contexte dans lequel on a travaillé, c'était la seule solution, la seule possibilité qui pouvait fonctionner aujourd'hui. C'était celle qu'on vous a présentée.
I'd like to talk a little bit about how the building can now be used. Because basically you could say you transformed this building into a three-dimensional park that connects the upper city and the lower city with this former foyer, which you turned into a three-dimensional park with a roof on top, right? And where air can pass through and where it can look through. Unfortunately, there's still a fence around the whole building, which prevents it from being used now like as a normal public space. I have two questions. Why is this so? And do you think this can be changed?
Do I answer?
You could?
Yeah, we can alternate.
Yeah.
There is something, what can you do as an architect and what you can't do as an architect. We can deliver ideas. Ideas that, of course, a city, with the Bouwmeester and the mayor at the time, they had their ideas on this. So, and these ideas were, in my opinion, very interesting. However, the limited of means. But then you can deliver also as an architect ideas on that. So that there came a kind of terraced park in between was, of course, not what they thought that would happen. And they supported it. After that, of course, you're confronted with a whole equipe of people who wants to make this project come through. And then there are many topic issues one have to rediscuss. And one of the issues is indeed, however it's a public park, or however it's a terraced park, or however it's a terrace, is what can be the use of it and how can one control it in many ways. So there is a fence today that deals with that part. A fence that will a little bit disappear in its nature as it develops further on, but today is very prominent there. But that fence comes there because of many reasons. So first of all, it has been commissioned by the city, but it has been worked out by a city, public-private company, one could say, who takes care. And thirdly, today it is exploited by another company. That other company takes over the commercial activities of the whole plot. And they were lucky with the fact that there are 3 levels, one with concert hall, one with congress hall, an exhibition space and an extra exhibition space, but these need to be operated in different times. That means also sometimes they are operated as open for the public or for paid events. And then it starts, where should we control what? How do we control the things when at the same time different activities take place? So at a certain moment you need a door, you need an entrance. You of course also could have laid that entrance strict at the building facades of the inner courtyard campus, but then there were other complications, as also still the impossibility to keep control over the whole zone. Sure. Sounds not that nice that the things are closed in a certain way, but we understand also our clients and the ones who use it today, their needs to have a control over it. Then we enter with another discussion point and we say, well, look to Paris parks, look to London parks that are open throughout the day for a couple of hours or certain moments it can be opened. And I know that on the pure city side, Georgios and Paul at that time, it sounded as something we have to make come true. But on the other hand, I know also that there are not conflicts, but tensions between the operation of the whole and also the availability of the city themselves to keep control over it when it would be open. We have to understand the city of Charleroi. I hope you don't feel it's quite a tough city still when it comes to the public space and how to keep the public space. So the efforts that happen right now, and in a fast way in the last 10 years, you see that the city becomes more open. But before, it was a very difficult issue on the public space. So this fence there indeed symptomatically shows still what the city is, but not only, it cannot be argued in that sense. The fence is there also in a pure operational status of the whole, let's say, little campus and how to work with that. And to me, there is an interesting point, but that needs to be now worked out. It's since 1 year, no, I mean 3/4 year, maybe half a year, it's operational, and it really starts to be operational. And what is to me the most interesting point is, and I hope I can say this in Basel here, is a point that in one or other way, you have the exploitant who has now one part, the north part of the building, and there is a south park, which we call the parking, but in a certain way is also, let's say, a parking without meaning. So it's not that it is heavily used. It's used to the moments that it is part of something going on, but then it's quite empty. And what I hear about many people arriving there is, can we organize something in the parking? And that I like very much. And then it comes to the point, indirectly, the parking belongs to the city. Because they are owner of the parking company, not as a city. And there I think new ground can be found to, in a certain way, squat your own project in the future. But we know we are in another political constellation right now. But that's, to me, the ideas we as an architect can deliver. And that's what happened, I think.
Georgios, can you add? What are the possibilities of the city to make this a truly public space? Or what are the realities of the city that make it difficult in the moment to use it as a public space? Remember, most of these people have never been to Charleroi.
Je pense qu'il faut revenir au premier slide que je vous ai montré, c'est que Charleroi, c'est une ville compliquée, quoi. It's a tough city. Et c'est le temps et la réussite du projet urbain. Donc de se dire que tout ce qu'on a fait, petit à petit, eh bien, on va voir revenir une nouvelle population, des nouveaux habitants, et que on va se retrouver quelque part dans une ville où les gens travaillent, où il y a moins de chômage, où il y a un campus universitaire qui fonctionne, où il y a simplement des habitants, des gens dans l'espace public, et que l'espace public va fonctionner normalement. Parce que là, à un certain moment, c'est un peu comme à Detroit. J'y étais il y a quelques années. On marche et il n'y a personne. Et donc, il y a un feeling assez négatif. Et donc, c'est ça. Je pense que ça va fonctionner le jour où on va retrouver 10 000 habitants en plus dans le centre-ville.
Okay, so it's a question of critical mass. There's not enough critical mass of people who live there, and it would be empty, you would say. But why not make a test to say we have opening hours from 9 o'clock until 9 o'clock in the night, and then we close it, so nobody can stay overnight, so the issues of homeless people staying, people taking drugs are maybe reduced. But you give the chance to people, for instance, skateboarders, who used this site before, who cannot use it in the moment, to actually appropriate the space. Why don't you offer the space in a limited way to people who need space to appropriate it?
Je pense Yann a dit quelque chose qui est assez juste, c'est que nous, les architectes, on délivre des idées. Et puis, à un certain moment, il y a les décideurs de la ville, ceux qui ont un mandat politique pour faire fonctionner la ville, et qui acceptent ou non les idées. Et je pense qu'il faut être très, très humble par rapport à ça. Et la décision actuelle, enfin la décision politique qui a été prise, c'est on va mettre la grille, la fence autour, c'est léger, temporairement. Alors, on va voir combien d'années. Et si le feeling à Charleroi redevient bon, la grille, le fence, on l'enlève.
Okay.
Et c'est tout. Et comment dire, en Angleterre, à Paris, enfin, je ne sais pas ici, mais il y a beaucoup de parcs qui sont fermés la nuit. Mm-hmm. Et ça n'empêche pas en fait que les parcs fonctionnent très bien. Ouais. Ici, ce qui a été décidé, c'est d'avoir quelque chose de très léger pour qu'on comprenne l'idée architecturale, l'idée urbaine qui était derrière le projet, c'est les continuités paysagères. Et que le Palais des Expositions est une interface entre le centre-ville et la périphérie verte de Charleroi. Moi, j'espère que demain, on va les enlever, ces grilles, ce grillage, la fence, pour pouvoir marcher, traverser le Palais des Expositions et aller dans la porte ouest qui a été dessinée en fait par l'architecte urbaniste Paola Vigano. Donc voilà, c'est un rêve.
Okay. Are there questions from the audience? You can happily ask them. Otherwise, I ask maybe a last question. Jan, you spoke about this project, and also Nicki spoke about it as an idea of an architecture that works with this 33.3%, that takes a given standard and says, yes, we could do with 100%, but we don't have to. We can also choose to reduce the amount. And so this was an example of this attitude, this project. Was this tied to this project, or do you think this can be a principal operation of architecture for you?
Well, maybe I repeat myself here one time too much, but of course the 33.3% comes along and you discuss it and you bring it to school to discuss it and so on and so on. So it's not that we started by saying we are a 33.3% practice that always operates like that. On the other hand, I have to say, I think due to the circumstances working in a Belgian Flemish field, but also with a certain en surplus interest personally and in the office, we always came to projects where economy was the key in how we decided things. So, and throughout the time, the last 5 years, we discovered that almost in all the projects we were operating, there was a kind of 1/3 issue around in one or other way, whether it was budget or time or whatever. And so it became a kind of statement as such. Now comes to me indeed that what we learned, and especially also when we studied this more with students also in a Zurich realm and so on, is that it became a kind of attitude of intervening, of slightly changing, but also coming to a point of rather an entr'acte, what we say recently. The point there is, to me, it should not be dogmatic at all, but on the other hand, it's maybe talking about economy, a good alternative for what is dogmatic today, namely the idea of sustainable architecture, which is really dogmatic, and often is no more, no less than keep on doing what we were always doing, but so-called in an ecological and energetic, more consequent way. But it doesn't change ideas. And here I think, and this was a risk of the scale, but by having such a scale, we indeed could also for ourselves and towards others in discussions emphasize that where we always complain we don't have enough, maybe sometimes we have too much. And then you can start, you are obliged actually to start to shift all your premises, to start to shift all what you learned in the way how you looked at. So I gave you one last example in that actually we realized the 100% project. Nothing of the building is not in another wave and another vague and another idea today. But we worked it out with a 1/3 project on which we had a 100% honorarium, but actually we had a 33% honorarium on a 100% project. So even that point needed us to shift in the office, how will we work on it? How do we detail things? And then you discover yourself, you're in a modus of super detailing everything. You say, no, stop, we don't have the means for it when it comes to the honorarium, which needs to cover the costs in a practice.
So basically you hurt yourself economically.
You start to hurt yourself. So luckily we saw it quite quickly, and we started to discuss to refrain from a certain detail, to go back to a more basic acceptance of all kind of things, which made, I can tell you just to, actually it's one of the most beneficial projects in the office.
Economically speaking.
Economically speaking.
One of the most profitable projects.
Profitable. So I think the whole thing is, and that's I agree with what Nicki says, is that there is no point in the development of the project that we not had to sit down and reconsider how we do it. And I think the ultimate exam was indeed when, as a kind of gift, they came to us and say, we have a problem with another Congress Center, which tripled each time in the tendering phase the budget. So we
Project
cancelled
by
it.
Julien de Smeet.
Yeah, we give you as a practical joke, you get 1/3 of the budget because you can do always something with that. But it was again a kind of like, and then they said, we said, wow, we don't know, and actually it was mandatory almost. And then they said at the end of the discussion, and by the way, it should be finished the same moment as you finish yours, because it's in the same time frame of subsidies on European level. And it did also, that moment I thought like we should not do that. We should not accept it, because we are running our project in a very efficient way, in a very progressing way, and we discussed it and said, let's not do it. That's why we even started our own competition to other colleagues who thought like, this is totally crazy. And then it came back on our table and we had to do it. But it really, how we organized it in the practice also, at the same time again, going for a building demand, etc. It was quite an exercise. But at the end, it was positive.
But why you say you made the project to 100%, you delivered everything that was asked for 1/3 of the budget, and you also get your honorarium relative to the third of the budget.
That's the point.
I remember that Lacaton Vassal, when they did their signature project in Bordeaux for Place Léon Aucoq, where the city asked them to embellish the square, and there was a budget that one could spend for that, and they said, no, actually we think the place is already beautiful. We have nothing to add to its beauty, so we don't intervene. We make no physical intervention. They added in this presentation, because it's an iconic moment when one of the city delegates said, mais qu'est-ce que vous allez construire? And they said, rien. Mais, ils ajoutaient, but they added, but we charge the full honorary. And I think that's actually very important.
Yeah. I mean,
because you spend a lot of time to make this 33% possible. No?
Yeah. It's like that. But maybe I'm also happy we don't have the full honorarium. Well, I'm not that happy because I would like to have it today. But I mean, in a general term, it needed to. And I should not exaggerate. It's not like we were daily on it. Mm-hmm. But as we had to rethink everything, that was also part of the process of what we were doing at that part. And I like to add maybe on that records and also to bring gratitude to them. As I told, there was a kind of like of city, it's not private, but a kind of like of separate administration, loose from the normal administration. It's called IGRITEC. It's an organization who built for the city. And when we won that competition, people said to me, IGRITEC, well, you can expect every day a letter from a lawyer because you are here and there and there and there, and that's where they are good in. And actually, well, you always get one because you have to announce things officially, but relatively we didn't got any, relatively. Or at least not of a complaint of something in which we were complained about. Mm. And I recently, all things go fast. I think it's a year ago now, when we had this meeting in Charleroi for the public, and the director of IGRITEC said, well, Jan, you know what is fantastic working with your team is that you never talked any day about architecture to us. Mm. We are here to make these buildings come true, to projects come true, and all the architects are constantly defending their architecture. You were always working with the numbers and with the issues and the problems and the here and there. But he said to me, I worked now 5 years with your team, or it was longer, I think. I learned about architecture. Mm-hmm. I like it really, the building. I couldn't imagine me from the start, what the hell are we doing? But throughout and understanding how it can work, I now understand something else about architecture. And I think this is a little bit what ends up with what Georgios came to say. The building is a memory for the city of Charleroi, more than any other church, more than any other building. When we had a meeting with the mayor, with Georgios Basmets, myself having a lecture now 1 year ago, I think, October 1 year ago, same time, and we had to present it to 2,000 people. It was the first time I needed to talk about architecture to a non-professional, non-students, non-freaks, non-colleagues, all kind of there around. And the only thing that came in the appreciation after was indeed that he said, you saved our history. And I think there comes at the end the record truck, and they said, and it's beautiful. And I thought like, well, it's time to stop now explaining, discussing the materials of sustainability or how we did the project and say, do you want to be there? Do you want to? Yes, I want to be there. And I think this is, to me, I shift now from economy of means to economy of beauty. And this economy of beauty has to do with also the memory that takes place in cities. So not demolishing this building, by the way, we demolished.
Parts.
That's also an irony, but not demolishing. I think this is what cities is about, not in a political statement like stop building and stop demolishing, but in a point of understanding what these buildings can mean for a city and not only in their own ecological material value.
Are there questions from the audience now? That's a possibility. Nicki and Inge, do you want to add anything? No? Okay, then I would like to ask you, if anyone in the audience would like to visit the building sometime soon, what would be a good opportunity for one of the upcoming events?
I think when something is going on, which happens now more and more, but it might be not a show you're really interested in, but at that moment you can enter it and you can experience it. And I think it's also interesting to go because there were kind of exhibitions and fairs and all kind of events, and sorry to say, of a political party opposite to the party of the mayor, of the far right side. But I mean, I think it are unique occasions to visit it, not only to look to the architecture and all what you've learned tonight, but to see also how, you know what I like the most? It's not a cultural center. And so the most ideal topic is, of course, that we all can build cultural centers and things that are really like, let's say, leveling up. And in a certain way, what happens there as programmation is not why you want to go there. But on the other hand, when you go there where something like this happens, it's a total other experience. And I think that's what we do, or at least what architecture, for me, is more importantly than the upgraded program or the upgraded ecology or the upgraded sustainability.
But Georgios, isn't there like a salon des arts et métiers in this fall? Yeah?
Dans un mois.
Dans un mois.
Oui, un mois, 2 mois, oui. C'est l'événement le plus important du Palais des Expositions. Oui.
Donc c'est en octobre.
En octobre, oui, je pense.
Okay, so end of October, if you have nothing better to do, go to Belgium and check this place out. Thanks a lot.